The Nature of True Prayer by F.L. Rawson. Chapter 5, How to Pray. One method of starting treatment. In starting a treatment, it is a good thing to think of God in His various aspects. Acquaint now thyself with Him and be at peace. Thereby good shall come unto thee. Job 22:21. Think therefore of God as inexhaustible, perfect love, incorporeal, everlasting life, and ever-present, omnipotent truth, unfolding its own immortal ideas as self-existent, unfathomable mind, which gives all the mental activity in heaven, divine and sinless soul, which gives all the wonderful wisdom and knowledge the real man has, supreme, infinite spirit, which is the cause of all the goodness and holiness. Remember that holiness means wholeness or perfection. Divine substance, which gives the permanence to everything in the spiritual world. The unerring and only intelligence. And last but not least, as principle, the principle of peace, joy, harmony, energy, activity, the principle of law and order, and the principle of all the many qualities which, with the main 8 qualities already mentioned, make up absolute good known as God. We should keep our thoughts as far as possible stayed on God. Isaiah 26:3. Try to think of yourself always as in the presence of God. My presence shall go with thee, and I will give thee rest. Exodus 33:14. In commencing your treatment, you can think of God as a vast, infinite mind. In that mind is the consciousness by means of which God thinks. That consciousness is as infinite as mind. Everywhere mind is, consciousness is. That consciousness is man specifically. That is to say, all the spiritual beings in heaven. We are all part of that consciousness by means of which God knows and thinks and works. Paul called this the Christ and spoke of Christ, the power of God, and the wisdom of God, 1 Corinthians 1:24. Using this as a part of the treatment gives you a better idea of what man is. Then you can think of the infinite ideas circulating in that infinite mind being passed from man to man by the action of God as love. In addition, man groups together God's ideas into glorious combinations. Some of them we call in the material world a sonata, a poem, a literary gem. He then calls your attention to this perfect combination, that is, passes it on to you. You receive it and rejoice in it, and obtain also the joy from perceiving the joy He has in giving it to you. Then you, in your turn, pass it on to others and obtain the joy from the recognition of their happiness. Think of infinity. Next, you can think of the infinite life, infinite love, infinite truth, infinite intelligence, joy, wisdom, and beauty, etc., in that perfect world. In treatment, whenever you can put the word infinite, do so. This gets you away from the limitations of legs and arms and shapes and forms and broadens your thought of God and heaven. Heaven is a world of 4 dimensions, of which we see 3. The 4th dimension is infinity, which swallows up the limitations of length, breadth, and height. In other words, heaven is a dimensionless world, a perfect state of consciousness. In heaven, everything is infinite. You have existed for infinite time. You have known an infinite number of spiritual beings, every one of them different, every one of them perfect. Every spiritual being reflects infinite love, life, wisdom, joy, knowledge, and beauty, and yet he has his individuality, which consists of the different combinations of ideas, the ideas of art, literature, music, scenery, etc., which each individual spiritual being presents to you to give you joy and happiness therefrom. You have been to infinite spiritual worlds, every one of them different, every one of them perfect. Of them, we can now photograph about 400 million misrepresentations in the form of the stars. You have heard infinite sonatas, symphonies, poems, literary gems, etc., every one different and every one perfect, and you yourself have created an infinite number, every one of them different and every one of them perfect, because God creates by means of the spiritual beings in heaven, called by St. Paul the Christ. Each spiritual being is as perfect as every other spiritual being, and in infinite time has created an infinite number of everything which God creates. God, as life, brings you the ideas. God, as truth, enables you to understand them. God, as love, causes you to pass them on. The Logos, or Word, is the creative action of God, which causes man to create everything that God creates. God never created the ideas and never created man. They have always existed perfect. Otherwise, at one time, God would not have been complete. The only things that are created or ever have been created are the infinite combinations of ideas which God is always creating and has always been creating by means of man. Then, having started your treatment by getting as clear an idea of heaven, the realm of mind, as possible, keep dwelling in thought on this perfect world until you have finished treating for yourself or for your patient, as the case may be. Work against details at present necessary. Before you start to work against the details of the troubles you want to overcome, it is better to work against the main evils. Working against the main evils and also against the detailed troubles is like using a double-barreled gun, one barrel of which is rifled for a bullet. Working against the main evils is like using a shotgun. It is bound to hit somewhere or other, although it may not be so effective as working definitely against the various symptoms of the trouble. This, like using the rifled barrel, is very effective if you hit the mark. I always, myself, start by working against universal evil. This is called the devil in theology, the ether by scientific men, and mortal mind by the modern schools of mental healing. Then I work against thoughts of materia medica, namely false medical beliefs. For instance, that because you catch measles, you are bound to be ill for a certain time, scarlet fever a different length of time, that certain foods produce indigestion, if you cut an artery, you must bleed to death, etc. Then I work against fear, which John speaks of in Revelation 21:8, when he writes, "But the fearful and unbelieving, and the abominable, and murderers, and whoremongers, and sorcerers, and idolaters, and all liars shall have their part in the lake which burneth with fire and brimstone, which is the second death." This is the death of matter and its attendant evils. This is the only thing that dies. The end of all matter and of the material man is dematerialization. The word dissolve is used in the Bible when dematerialization, or the disappearance forever of all matter, is spoken of. In the account that our Lord gives of the end of the world, he ends up as follows: "Then shall two be in the field, the one shall be taken, and the other left." Matthew 24:40. In the account in Luke 17:34 and 35, it is still more exact because it says, "There shall be two men in one bed, and two women shall be grinding together. The one shall be taken, and the other left." This means that the material man will be taken, and the spiritual man alone will remain. In other words, the mist of matter will disappear, and everyone will appear to wake up and find themselves what they always have been: perfect spiritual beings in a perfect world governed by a perfect God. Fear can be utilized. John puts fear first because fear is a belief in a power other than that of God, a belief in a power of evil, blasphemy. Fear, however, when a man knows how to pray properly, can be made of actual value by its reversal, because fear is your mental perception of the thoughts that are attacking you at the moment or are going to attack you in the future, and it shows you in which direction you have to work. If by prayer you can drive out all thoughts of fear, then you know that the difficulty is overcome. It means that the thoughts causing the fear are destroyed and you are free at all events for the time. Work to improve your mind. Besides working against the main troubles, you want to work for the principal things. For instance, for love, spiritual perception, and wisdom. We all desire to be more thoughtful and considerate for others, to understand God, truth, better, to be wiser when trying to help our fellow men. In working for a thing, it is better to start by thinking of God. For instance, in trying to eliminate anger, irritability, and annoyance, that is, to show more love, start by thinking of God as love. Then, think of love as omnipotent in the world of reality, acting everywhere and upon everything. Then, think of man, the infinite consciousness of God, as being absolutely loving towards all. You must not exactly think of somebody doing something towards another, but think of the absolutely infinite perfect love that one being manifests towards another spiritual being, and how this love is manifested by the passing on of the perfect ideas which give absolute joy and happiness to all concerned. Dwelling thus on love and its manifestation is the opening of the human mind and, speaking from a theological point of view, allowing the action of God to take place on the necessary portion of the human mind of the patient so that it is purified more or less and does not in the future respond quite so easily to the thoughts which are opposite of love, but on the contrary is acted upon by the loving thoughts. In working for spiritual perception, I commence by thinking of God as spirit, the principle of all goodness and holiness and purity, and then I realize that man has spiritual perception, that is to say, has the power of perceiving perfectly all the spiritual ideas in heaven. I usually continue by realizing that man has spiritual discernment, knows truth, and is always thinking rightly. The realization of this results in the improvement of the material man's mind in these respects so that he can understand spiritual things better. In working for wisdom, I realize that God is the principle of all wisdom, and therefore, man reflects divine wisdom, intelligence, and knowledge, and knows instantly everything he needs. Work against your difficulties one by one. I have already pointed out that the words of Jesus, "If any man will come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross daily and follow me," Luke 9:23, mean that we have to deny that we are material, turn in thought to God, and daily take up and work against our difficulties. I think that we should take up each of our difficulties one by one, and while still thinking of heaven, deny the existence of the first trouble, and then realize as clearly as we can the existence of the perfection of the opposite in heaven. For instance, supposing your difficulty is one of the commonest, namely, not having sufficient to live on comfortably, you would realize that there is no want. God is the source of all supply, and man has instantly everything he needs. The reason for this is that the only thing man needs in heaven is the ideas of God that continually come to him. You can therefore continue realizing that there are infinite ideas available to man instantly. Idea after idea follows with perfect regularity. Then, if you have reason to think that your work from which you get your income is not quite satisfactory. To get better work, you can realize that man does perfect work, always passing on these ideas to his fellow man. Man groups these ideas together into glorious combinations which radiate out an infinite mind, giving infinite joy and happiness. You can follow on by realizing that there is no mortal mind to stop this perfect action, for there is only one mind, God. God is the only power and the only ruler. The secret of overcoming want is the secret of overcoming any form of evil which is constantly coming into your mind. It is to nip the sentence in the bud before it is even completed in your mind. When, for instance, you are going to think, I shall never be able to pay that bill. Before you get further than I shall never, start your reversal. For instance, it is a lie. Man is spiritual and has everything he needs directly as it is needed. In working against specific troubles, say, for instance, against a headache, if you know what the apparent cause of the headache is, you will get rid of it more quickly by denying the existence of its apparent cause. For instance, it may be caused by a fall. It may be that you think somebody is thinking too strongly about you. It may be that it comes from bad digestion. In fact, there may be many different apparent causes of a headache. None of them, however, are correct, as there is no cause and effect in the material world. The only cause is God. The mere detail of the words, or indeed the detail of what you think, is not of very much importance. The whole object in treatment is to get right away from the material world so that you are actively thinking of God and of heaven. Then, if you have formed an idea of what is going on in heaven, it is easier to continue dwelling on the perfection of that perfect world than if you did not know what was taking place there. Treatment, only a sign of the healing. When you think of the world of reality, it is only a sign, but an infallible sign, that the so-called healing is taking place, that the imaginary mist of matter which hides heaven from us is thinning and disappearing, so that we see heaven more and more as it is, a man as well instead of ill, happy instead of miserable. Man's progress depends solely upon the number of seconds during his 24 hours in which he is thinking of God and his wonderful world, heaven. The prophet Isaiah says, "Thou wilt keep him in perfect peace whose mind is stayed on thee." Isaiah 26:3. By steadily working in this way, your knowledge of God grows, and as it grows, so it becomes easier and easier to get right away from all thoughts of the material world until at last all thoughts of sin, disease, and limitations disappear, and you appear to find yourself in God's perfect world. Ye shall seek me and find me when ye shall search for me with all your heart. Jeremiah 29:13. As when you are affirming, it means that the mind is permanently being purified. You should amplify the affirmations as much as possible. For instance, it is excellent to take any text from the Bible or passages from other scriptural writings that bear on the subject. While treating, care must be taken not to use passages in the Bible such as, "1,000 shall fall at thy side, but it shall not come nigh thee," Psalms 91:7, or "Perfect love casteth out fear," 1 John 4:18, as this is believing in the existence of evil. They are correct statements with regards to the material so-called world and may help a materially minded person, but not those who are relying upon their realization of God for help. Such texts as, "In thy presence is fullness of joy," Psalms 16:11, are excellent. If possible, give only the method and not details. In teaching people how to work, it does not do to show them too much. It is better to give them the main lines and let them work things out for themselves. We should leave others free to follow individual convictions upwards, and avoid the guilt of attempting to deprive the sons of God of their divine rights of freedom, and so unwittingly fight against God and cloud the glorious view unfolding, which blesses each and all. Jesus said to inquisitive Peter, "What is that to thee? Follow thou me." John 21:22. We should mind our own business. We have quite enough to do to look after our own thoughts. If we are doing this well, we are doing very well. The above method of working is only one amongst many. The principal thing is to stop blaspheming God by thinking wrongly of His creation, and to get right away from all thought of the patient, his troubles, and the material world, keeping yourself actively thinking of God or God's perfect world and what takes place there. This active conscious communion with God is Emmanuel, which being interpreted is God with us. Matthew 1:23. That was chapter 5, How to Pray. Join us next time for chapter 6, Selflessness, True Love, and Purity Essential. See you then.